What's the number one challenge for businesses today?
Workforce development, attracting, recruiting, and retaining people.
And that's why we created this podcast, designed for the frustrated CEO, the under-resourced recruiter, or the overworked manager, to give you the tools to tackle those WTF moments.
It's time to open another workforce therapy file.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Workforce Therapy Files. File number 15. This will be the 5 golden rules of recruiting campaigns.
You ready, Jamie?
5 golden rules. Jason asked us not to do that, but
I actually asked them.
that's the good thing about having 3 people on a podcast is 2 outweighed 1.
Sure, it's a democracy.
It is.
5 golden rules of recruiting campaigns. We put some work into this.
Hang on. Because we're on...
She said, I'm going to interrupt you.
So close. Because we're on file 15.
Oh, that's right.
This is a pretty big deal for us.
It is.
I mean, can we just take a moment and celebrate the success that we've had?
Yeah. I made up a
15
statistic
files.
that most podcasts stop at like file 5. I just made that statistic up, but I'm pretty sure there's a dropout rate. Is it 10?
It's episode 10.
Episode 10. And we're 5 episodes beyond that.
We made it.
Hashtag math.
That was a high five, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little bit of detail to our supporters, 13 plus moms. We've had about 700 unique downloads in the last 6 months.
Woo!
700,
Yes.
right? 127 of those this week. I'm sorry, this month.
This month.
And
It's incredible.
Yeah. And this week is 33. So, I mean, we need to talk about success because no one else is going to for us. I mean, we're not going to get tennis elbow over here, but I think that's pretty good.
And I think that's a great segue. You
Yeah.
do need to talk about success.
Mm-hmm.
You do.
And so, I think one of the first golden rule is creating a plan, owning it and managing it. Who's been successful with it before? Who's maybe not been successful with it before? Has anyone actually owned it? Is there actually a plan? Those are some really hard questions you need to ask yourself. So
Make the plan, know the plan, nail the plan. I think one of the compliments to that is making sure that you let people know the plan was nailed. Right?
yes,
So when you've put a plan together, you've communicated the plan, you put people tasked with the things that go into the plan. How do you celebrate those successes and the key milestones, and so that you can see what's going well, what isn't, and encourage people to continue the plan.
absolutely. So first step of the plan, the first golden rule is to make a plan.
Make a plan.
You can't execute the plan if you don't have one. So how do you do that? How do you do that, Molley? How do you make a plan?
Well, I think you need to know what it should be. What
The
you
goal.
think you know,
Sure.
right? You think you know what the idea of it is, right? But you don't necessarily know. So how do you find out? I think you ask, you communicate, you do a survey, you have small focus groups, you get information from the people that are doing the thing today. And I even think the more valuable lesson is the people that aren't doing it anymore. If you have connections with people that aren't doing the thing anymore, why? Why aren't they doing it?
Right.
And how can we learn and grow from it? So really understanding the public perception of your organization and the internal perception of your organization. 2 very important things.
Just ask.
Just ask.
Just ask.
Yeah. So first create a plan. And then once you have a plan, ask. Ask the team. Ask the public. What do you think of us? What do you think of our brand? What are the things you enjoy or don't enjoy? Get ready for some, hard answers because they may be coming.
Like if you have a 2 rating on Glassdoor and you've had 10 to 15 current and previous employees comment, I would say that that's not good. 2 out of 5 is not good.
That's right.
And we've talked about in a previous episode, listening campaigns. We were talking about them this morning, preparing for this episode. And listening campaigns are a great way to do it, meaning listening to your social media channels, listening to all review channels across the web. And there are tools you can purchase that do that for you. I would say we do that. Our company does that. And I would say you still need someone to really go through and synthesize that information and determine what's relevant, what's valuable. Even generic things like your Google or your Yelp listing, you're going to get, let's say you sell chicken tenders, and your chicken tenders, of your 100 reviews about your chicken tender restaurant, 85 of them may be about the actual quality of the chicken tenders or the experience that they had.
That's right.
But there might be a small percentage of those that are about what it's like to work there. So going through those and ensuring you're looking at every avenue people take to praise or complain about your organization will help you really understand what the underlying themes are.
That actually speaks to like my deepest request for all of the marketing teams that are out there is recognizing the convergence of customer feedback and employee feedback and how it affects both. So thank you so much for using that example, because I know personally the amount of times I've had conversations with marketing teams
Yeah.
where their focus is on customer attraction, customer relationship, customer branding has sometimes left this really big gap. So I appreciate that example.
Yeah.
So number 1 was create a plan. Number 2 is finding ways to get information, right? You talked about listening campaign. Number 3, I'm going to chime in and say, we also want you to think about your brand ambassadors. And for an employer, those are the people that work at your organization. So learning what kind of feedback they would offer through employee engagement surveys or other employee sentiment surveys, getting their feedback. I think a nice way to layer some of this data is also pulling exit interview data to understand the things that departing employees have said about their experience working there. All of those things really play nicely together to help affect the evolution of your plans.
Yeah. And so you take those surveys, you take those information that is brought back through the brand ambassadors, through your internal exploratory processes, and then you apply that to a brand employer branding campaign. So you build it off of those results. And an employer branding campaign, I will say, because people get confused about what is expected out of that. Do not expect to get new customers. Do not expect to hire 40% more people because you did an employer branding campaign. This is an adjustment. This is shining a spotlight on the business and who you are. I would say it this way. Employers don't try to step into the spotlight and follow it around. Be the person shining the spotlight. Shine the spotlight on the great parts of your team that you discovered through those surveys, that you discovered through your brand ambassadors. There are great things about your organization you may not even understand. So then once you have that information, you can shine a light on that, because what it's going to do, it is going to prime the pump for the next step, which is a workforce marketing or advertising campaign. And so once you have built, you understand, you've created the plan, you've done the surveys, you've got your ambassadors rolling, you've shined a light, you shine the spotlight on all the great parts about your business. The public knows about it, the internal team knows about it, they're talking to their friends and family. Then you actually start driving candidates into the funnel. You're driving applicants to your talent team, because at that point, you're ready. You're ready. You know what the story is. You can tell the story, and you can do it in a way with a conversion mechanism behind it, where you're trying to drive people to take an action. Call to action, CTA. It's a big deal. You got to have a call to action. What do you want these people to do in this campaign? You want them to fill out an application? Do you want them to become a lead? Just generate a lead for your talent team? Do you want them to give you information? What's going on here? So identify what those things are. You'll start driving the applications quicker than you think. And they're going to be more quality because you did your homework and you shined a light on the right things before you started. So
Now,
I think those are some real important things to keep in mind.
I think that those are all great, Jason. And Jamie, the point that you made about the brand ambassador and what that can do for an organization. And then really building out what the campaign should be to attract those candidates. But Jason, one of the concerns that I have is when organizations put this effort, and this is effort, this is a commitment, this is looking at where we are today and how we strategize to build the talent. You get to the point of the workforce advertising campaigns, and then you build this funnel of people coming in, and then you don't have the in-house capacity to manage the talent that's coming in, you will harm yourself.
Fail. Yep.
And those are things that are very difficult to come back from, because there are candidates that apply for jobs and never hear anything. That is the worst thing that can happen. I don't care what level the job is. If you've got an organization and they don't touch base with candidates that aren't even qualified for the job, just to send them a decline letter. Thanks for applying. Keep us in mind for next time. Check out our job board. Here's the link. That's huge. At least they know.
That's right.
But if you have a campaign going and you're building the candidate flow and all of these candidates are coming in and you don't have the capacity internally to manage them, you're doing yourself more harm than good and a waste of money.
Yeah, I would look for when I was a recruiter of one for an organization, there would be times where I would just pause my posting so that I could work through realistically the candidates that had currently applied and then repost, not necessarily relaunch the entire campaign,
Right.
but press pause so I could at least give everybody that had taken the time to apply for our opportunities a good experience with feedback and things like that. I mean, there are risks either way, but I think the risk of having a good experience whenever you've been recognized as an applicant is incredibly important.
100%. Candidate experience is everything.
And I think something you said earlier, we were just speaking about regarding, getting too many applicants sometimes or overwhelming yourself. I mean, we've all in this room, we've all been in that boat where we've been working with a client. They've hired us to do this thing. We've done it a little too well. And that's a problem.
Right.
It is a problem. It overwhelms their team. That you may have 4 recruiters on your team and you may have a stack of 800 applications to go through, so then there's a screening problem. And that's something that I think in the process of recruiting, working with outside firms, working with your internal other teams to get this done, you need to set clear expectations, and then you need to be okay pivoting and changing or pausing a campaign.
Or
saying,
augmenting your team with additional resources to go
Right.
through the stack.
Yep.
Right. I like that we're still calling it a stack. Like
It's a digital
like
stack.
It's here, right? But I don't know. In my mind, it's still a stack of papers.
I've done that. Yeah, gone through the stack.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that you can pivot. If not for friends, I wouldn't like that word at all because I'm not a fan because of 2020. However, pivoting is an essential part of workforce advertising campaigns, of managing through the candidates, of what job is it that we're really hiring for? Because if you do really well at it, you could have a huge volume of candidates for job A. What if you fill job A? You haven't even started on job B because you thought that was going to be a couple months down the road. Well, whose knowledge, skills, and abilities are equal to that of a job B that we could be transferring over? So you have to be able to think of different ways outside of this is the way we've always done it to ensure success in the large sum of investment that this type of engagement takes.
And pivoting might also be one of those things that you do when you're trying to figure out what are you going to advertise about your organization. So if your organization, you go and look at your Glassdoor reviews and you see that everybody's talking about how hot it is to work there in the summer. So you put climate control in. It's okay to do an entire campaign that says now 20 degrees cooler
Absolutely.
in our building.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it does 2 things. One, it recognizes the feedback that people have offered. It recognizes why your score is so low. You've paid attention to it. You put actions in place, and it demonstrates that you care about that feedback and that you want it to be a better place to work, and you've invested in that. So I think you need to take those as wins and talk about the things that have been previously identified as areas of opportunity for your organization.
And showing that vulnerability is so powerful. We saw our rankings on Indeed. Everyone was complaining about the temperature, so we invested in climate control. It's huge.
Yeah, you're telling a story about how you listen.
Yes.
And, by the way, the lead in for that ad is we're the coolest job in town.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then you tell the story.
Good job, marketing
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. You tell the story. And then, they say, oh, they actually listen to their people.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that it was hot in there, but it's not now. Yeah. I like that a lot. I think you're right, Molly. Pivot has been overused quite a bit.
Yeah.
And some people may need to put earmuffs on for this, but we've even pivoted in terms of driving applicants into an ATS and just not done that if it wasn't working. Some people, and we've worked with really, really large global organizations that say we have to. This is the way we have to do it. And I'm like, what if we just did a test?
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes that proves out. Applicant tracking systems are a beautiful tool, but sometimes you have to, skirt those things once in a while just to test something. And maybe you find that one aspect of the way you're using your ATS is not the way you should be using it. Or maybe you shorten the length of the application. Just get that. I would just encourage everyone, just get that lead in the door and then work it. And I know it's going to take an extra body on your talent team. I'm sorry.
We like to call them people,
People,
not just bodies.
an extra body.
Come on, Jason.
That's right. It's not human capital.
Up.
It's not human
Ick.
capital
Really?
anymore. Edit that out, Jen.
Bodies.
Edit
I need
that
to
out.
hire bodies. You know what happens?
So
I get up
ick.
and walk out when somebody says that.
I'm saying.
I know you're going to need an extra resource
There
Love
we
it.
go.
Gosh, that's
on
a-
your team.
It felt better saying it,
It
too,
did
didn't
feel
it?
better,
Yeah,
yeah.
it did.
So
But I want to give you a quick parcel compliance tip, because one of the things I see get handed down as legacy, this is the reason we have to do it, is the reason we use applicant tracking systems is because it makes it easier for us to report and reflect on the efforts that we've made and the way that those things have worked. It is not a requirement that everybody go through your ATS. You have to find a way to be able to document who's applied for your positions, how you marketed your positions, whether or not they received a similar consideration. Now, where there is some stickiness is when you're using leads and in your application process, you've included things like submitting a writing sample, and you've got to do an assessment, and you have to do these things as part of your application in order for it to be considered. The lead needs to go through those activities that are being used to determine whether or not somebody is a qualified applicant, right? So it's important to make sure that your candidates are going through the same process, and it's important to consider anyone who's expressed interest in your roles as a candidate
Yeah.
to include in these leads.
Well,
It
and-
doesn't mean you don't work through it or you don't use a different way to attract
Right.
folks to become candidates, but there are some things that you may need to do to offset that activity.
I'm glad you bring that up because the goofy marketing guy, their goal is to get you that applicant, to get you that lead,
Yes.
get someone to
Right.
the door who can do the job. And then we walk back to the beginning of the line and we help the next person get in the door. So yeah, often I just say, look, I know it's extra work, but let's just try this. And not that it always works, but it does work in a lot of instances when we're stuck because there's this bulky, ATS process or onboard process,
Yeah.
and we're losing people in that. Could we hire 3 times as many people, 3 times as fast if we skipped that? I don't mean skip it. Maybe
Right.
it's a manual entry. Maybe it's let's go back to this now that you're excited about coming in, and let's get you to fill out this application.
Well, and maybe it's not even extra work. It might just be different work.
It's just delayed.
When I've had team members in the past that whenever I've talked about doing sourcing activities,
Yeah.
they've talked about, well, I've got all these candidates I already have to respond to. What time do I have to do sourcing on top of it? Let's source the right candidates or weed through the wrong. I mean, either way, it's work, no matter how you do it. So in your situation where you're actually putting together if you reference one of our former episodes, we called it the Lego interest. If you're putting that together and the people that are coming through as leads are qualified in the sense that they have an interest in the kind of work that we're doing, well, it's worth the work because these are individuals that are fitting a particular profile that we've seen to be successful, right? So it's just different work. It may not be extra work.
Yeah, you're really kind of just delaying them filling out the formal application. You're going through an initial filter that says, are you even interested or qualified? Let's have a quick conversation. or just gather some very basic information, and then we'll move on, fill out the application. By then, they're probably warm and committed, and you can really put them through that. But asking every single person who's moderately interested in working for you to fill out a 4-page application is going to just kill your response rate.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the things that is shifting that hasn't happened in a while, particularly for the people that we work with, the companies that we work with, we actually have organizations filling all of their positions. So typically in the companies that Incipio works with, you're talking about organizations that fill many jobs a year, right? For the first time in 4 years, seriously, I had a recruiter respond to one of our weekly meetings and said, all of my jobs are filled. Wow, that's fantastic. That I haven't heard those words.
Lunch is on me.
Right.
mm-hmm.
So, but then you have to think of the shift.
Yeah.
Because now you've got managers typically in this recruiting environment where the candidates are coming in, they're getting the talent, they're reviewing it, they're seeing it, but I don't have any jobs open.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have to change the way that your managers see the individuals that are coming in, of the talent that you've been able to really get granular on, that are coming in, that are top talent. Of every 2 people that you attract to a job, you want to hire one of them. Those are the ratios that you need to think through when you're attracting the talent. So how do you build a talent pool? Pipeline development, what does that look like? And how does that work for my organization? And how do I take advantage of those people that are attracted to the position that didn't fill out an application for XYZ reason? Whether it be, I really can't go full-time for 6 months for whatever reason, or I'm getting ready to graduate, I'll have that certification in a year. Well, you still want those people because you still paid for them to come into the pipe. So how about we think strategically and proactively to build the talent pipeline for your company for specific positions? So then the vacancy report that you have on positions continues to stay in the single digits because you've taken the time to build this pipeline. So here's an example. How do I continue to keep someone engaged that applied for a position and they're not available for 6 months? Well, if they tap the, short form and just put their information in, you've got it. You call them, you put them in there in the system, however you're maintaining it, and make that a note. So they're continuing to get the monthly newsletter or the updates on the jobs that are being posted or. Mm-hmm. You have to look at all avenues of where the talent is and how it's coming in, because as we've talked about in previous files, the talent pool isn't growing. The talent pool that we're seeking to fill positions with has to be the talent that we want for the right reasons. Knowledge, skills, and abilities is one thing, but culture, environment, and reward structure are so important to an individual's life cycle with an employer. You have to weigh all the options. And if I apply for a job that I'm not available for 6 months, thinking that there could be a possibility and you stay engaged with me, I'm not going to look for another job. I'm going to go back to you and say, hey, remember we talked about 6 months ago? How are we looking today? That's huge.
It's huge, yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I was on a soapbox. Did I do that right? Oh,
Jason's the only one that's allowed to make sound
sorry.
effects. Don't
Yeah, I'm the
forget
sound
that.
Sorry,
effects
Jason.
guy. Yeah.
sorry. Dang it.
Molley was getting off her soapbox. Click,
Yeah.
click. That's right. Shoot.
Are those steps?
Yeah. It's 2 steps.
Did you say
she was
clink, clink?
click, click.
I
okay.
did, like we had tap
Yeah.
shoes on.
She did.
So
yeah.
I know that today's file has been about 5 golden rules of recruiting campaigns, but I want to make sure that you folks can go back and refer to files 8, 9, and 10 and taking a listen to those. We do a deeper dive on pipeline development, retention, engagement, all the things.
I'm going to recap the 5 golden rules.
Well, you didn't say it right.
I'm sorry. Rewind. I'm going to recap the
5 golden golden rules.
Number 1, create a
You
plan.
cringe every time.
Number 1, create a plan. Number 2, survey, public, internal, get both perspectives. Do some internal adjustments and brand ambassador outreach. Then run an employer branding campaign to show the world, shine a spotlight on how wonderful you are, those great things about you. Then dive a little harder into more of a conversion campaign, a workforce marketing or advertising campaign. That is 4. And then lastly, look at your talent pool, build a pipeline, do retention work, ongoing. This does not need to be one and done. You're circling back. You're creating a process around all this that is repeatable and is successful. So those are the 5 golden rules. Check out the show notes if you want to kind of look at those a little more closely if you didn't take good notes or you were driving. And then I will also, we never do this, but I'm going to real quick, I'm going to make.
Hang on. What are you getting ready to do?
I'm getting ready. I'm going off the rails.
Uh-oh. We've been on.
I got to make another
I didn't authorize that.
I didn't
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
We don't even do soapboxes.
This is
when it
unauthorized.
happens.
They had no idea this was coming. No, actually, we don't ever do any hard selling for ourselves. And I just want to say, what we talked about today, there were a lot of things in there that you're probably saying to yourself, oh, great, more work. You know, now I have to do this, now I have to do that. Well, let me tell you, you may only have to do it once until the process is created. And there are companies like Parcel, like Incipio, like Crowd
Hey.
South that do that work. We don't all do everything, but we do some things really well, each one of us. And together, we're very powerful. And when we do get together and work on something, we can really change a culture, build a process, and set something in place that can have longevity to it. So, done with the selling, but I just wanted to mention it because, you know, again, I hate leaving these things at the end sometimes and saying, wow, we just dumped a lot on these people that
Yeah.
are thinking, man, how am I going to, I can't do that.
These
When
guys
am I
are
going to do
so
this?
out of touch.
Oh, they're out of touch, yeah. Well, we're saying, you know, you don't have to hire for it. You don't even have to add a role to the team. Just, you know, bring someone in for a little while to get it all propped up and then set a process and do it yourself or
Absolutely.
add a role later.
And
So,
to that point, we've also helped teams restructure their work so that these things that you know that you have to do to guarantee a solidified workforce
yeah.
can be done.
And the contact information for all 3 of those amazing organizations I just mentioned are in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So, Jim, close that file.
Thanks for listening to the Workforce Therapy Files. We hope you learned something new, and we're thankful for the time that you spent with us today. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us. Our contact information's listed in the show notes. Until next time, keep your head up.